Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Vocational Nursing and Psychiatric Technicians on March 3, 2023 board meeting. My name is Carol Mountain. I'm the board president. I would like to call this meeting to order at 9:14 a.m. First, some housekeeping information on how this meeting will be conducted. This meeting is being held in person and via WebEx. If we need a motion, I will call for a motion. If you are participating via WebEx, please use the raise hand function for recognition to make or second a motion. I will take a roll call vote for each motion. We will take public comment on each agenda item. When I ask for public comment, if you are participating via WebEx, please use the raise hand function for recognition. Members of the public who request to speak will have up to 3 minutes to speak, and you will be notified when you have 30 seconds remaining. Your name is not necessary, but please indicate how you would like us to identify you. For the sake of efficiency, the executive officer may respond directly to public comment or defer to the appropriate staff person or counsel as appropriate. For any questions directed to board members, I will either answer the question or direct it to board members as appropriate. We will now do an alphabetical roll call to establish quorum. We have a new board member, Rashima Sanson. She was appointed to the board on January 11, 2023. Welcome to the board, Rashima. Please introduce yourself and let the board know about yourself.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Rashima Sanson. I'm happy to be here. A little bit about myself. I have over 10 years combined of quality and compliance experience across a supply chain as well as consumer products and goods. I am a credential educator, and I look forward to serving on the board.
Thank you. Board members, when your name is called, please introduce yourself and give a brief description of your role with the board. Alita Carpenter.
Yes, I've been on the board for 5 years. I'm the chair of the Legislation and Regulation Committee. I have a background as a lobbyist, retired sometime, and I mainly serve on boards these days.
Thank you. John Dirking.
Good morning, and welcome to our two newest members, Ms. Sanson and Ms. Moore, wonderful governor's appointments. I'm John Dirking, current board vice president. I'm a Senate Rules appointee, and I've been here, it's now 7 years. Thank you. Time flies.
Wow. Ken Maxey.
Yes, good morning, and I share the sentiment of welcoming our new board members as well. Been on the board now, I believe, at least 5 years. I chair the enforcement committee, and for a profession, I am a community relations person.
Thank you. Leslie Moore.
Good morning. I'm Leslie Moore. I've been on the board since November of 2023. I have background with working with CAP, California Psychiatric Technicians. I'm an instructor from Valley College, San Bernardino Valley College, and I'm honored to be here today.
Thank you. Nellie Niebleth.
Welcome, and I am Nellie Niebleth. My background is in disability rights advocacy and medical care, and I'm currently working in digital equity issues for the San Gabriel Valley and work when it comes to technical issues in equity in healthcare and education.
Thank you. Rashima Sanson. Say you're here. Here. Thank you. And I'm Carol Mountain. I am the education member. I'm also the president of the board, and I've been with the board since 2018. Based on roll call, we have a quorum. We will move to agenda item number 2, Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Maxey, thank you.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Maxey. Ms. Yamaguchi, would you please introduce the board staff?
Good morning, everybody. Madam Chair, thank you so much. Elaine Yamaguchi, Executive Officer. With us here from the BVNPT staff, we have Mark Ito, our Assistant Executive Officer, Antoinette Wood, our Enforcement Chair, Jay Prouty, our Discipline Manager, Shelley Brown, I think, because my eyes are terrible, our Licensing Manager, Doris Piers, our Legislation and Regs Manager, looks like Mike Hall and Zeb Berkulon, our licensing supervisors. I believe online we have our SNEC, Beth DeYoung. Back in the back room, we have our NECs, Jessica Gomez, Charlene De La Rosa, and Cindy Fairchild. And if I missed anybody, I apologize. Oh, of course, and a big, because I usually save her for last because she does so much, Rebecca Ball, our administrative analyst / guru for board meetings / budget, finance, facilities, supplies, contracts, and a few other things. Thanks, Rebecca. I think I did. He just fits in.
Legal counsel, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kenneth Swenson, Senior Staff Counsel, Attorney 3, General Counsel of the Board.
We will move to agenda item 4, board officer elections. Mr. Swenson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now is the time and place for the board elections. There are 2 officers, the president and vice president. There's a memo in the agenda materials explaining the traditional and customary procedure for board elections. So at this time, we'll be taking nominations for the office of vice president. Any nominations, president. Any nominations for the office of president?
Mr. Swenson, having been here 7 years, I'm very pleased with the current trajectory of the Board of Vocational Nursing and Psych Techs, and I would nominate Dr. Carol Mountain for president for the ensuing year.
Alita Carpenter, I second that motion.
And Dr. Mountain, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, I do.
Thank you, Dr. Mountain. Any other nominations for the office of president? Any other nominations for the office of president? Hearing none, we'll proceed by roll call vote. Kindly please state your vote by identifying Dr. Mountain by name. If there's an aye or a yes vote, I'll construe that to be a vote for Dr. Mountain. Ms. Brown? Excuse me. Ms. Carpenter?
Aye.
Mr. Deerking?
Aye. Dr. Mountain?
Mr. Maxey?
Dr. Mountain, aye.
Ms. Moore?
Dr. Mountain, aye.
Ms. Needless?
Dr. Mountain, aye.
Thank you. Ms. Rooks? Not present, all right. Ms. Sun?
Dr. Mountain, aye.
Dr. Mountain?
Abstain.
Thank you. The presumed motion unanimously carries. Thank you. Now is the time for the nominations to the office of Vice President. Do we have any nominations for the office of Vice President?
Mr. Swenson, I'd like to nominate Mr. Deerking.
I second that.
Mr. Deerking, do you accept that nomination?
I will accept, thank you.
Any other nominations for the office of Vice President? Any other nominations for the office of Vice President? Hearing none, we'll proceed to a roll call vote. Ms. Carpenter?
Aye.
Ms. Carpenter is an aye, which will be construed as a vote for Mr. Deerking. Mr. Deerking?
I will abstain, thank you.
Mr. Deerking abstains. Mr. Maxey?
Mr. Deerking, aye.
Ms. Moore?
Mr. Durkin, aye.
Ms. Nieblus?
Mr. Durkin, aye.
Ms. Rooks? Yeah. Ms. Sonson?
Mr. Durkin, aye.
Dr. Mountain?
Mr. Durkin, aye.
The motion passes, the presumed motion passes unanimously. Congratulations to the President and Vice President.
Thank you. We will move on to Agenda Item 5A, acceptance of the minutes from November 18, 2022 board meeting. So we have minutes from our board meeting on November 18, 2022 to approve. These are included in your packets and posted online. The links to the YouTube videos of each board meeting are printed in this agenda. Can I have a motion to approve and a second for the November 18, 2022 minutes?
So moved.
Thank you.
I will second.
Thank you. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, any public comment?
This is the moderator. I'll defer to any public comment you have in the room first, and then I have opened the Q&A question and answer panel, so if anyone logged into the meeting wants to make a comment, you may type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists, or you may simply raise your hand. Madam President, I am not seeing any requests for comment.
Thank you. I will do a roll call and establish who's in favor, opposed, or abstains. Ms. Carpenter?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Durkin?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Maxey?
Yes.
Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. Nieblus? Ms. Nieblus?
This is the moderator. She's muted. I sent her a request to unmute.
Ms. Nieblus? Okay, we'll come back. Ms. Sonson?
Yes.
Thank you. And I am a yes. We'll try one more time. Ms. Nieblus? All right, she may be having technical difficulties. That carries by a unanimous vote of 6. That's a quorum, yeah? Agenda item 5B, acceptance of the minutes from the December 9, 2022 board meeting. We have minutes from our board meeting on December 9, 2022 to approve. These are included in your packets and posted online. Can I have a motion to approve and a second for the December 9, 2022 minutes?
I so move, Nellie.
Was that Ms. Nieblus?
Yes, Nieblus.
Thank you.
I will second.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, any public comment?
This is a moderator. Again, I defer to the Sacramento location. If anyone has a comment there, they may go to the front of the room and speak into the mic. Otherwise, for participants logged in through WebEx, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. If you wish to make a comment or simply raise your hand, we are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
I will do a roll call and establish who's in favor, opposed, or abstained. Ms. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Durking?
Yes.
Mr. Maxey?
Yes.
Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. Neeblis?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Sonson?
Yes.
And I'm Carol Mountain, and I vote yes. So that is moved by a unanimous vote of 7. Fund condition and budget updates. DCA budget staff.
Thank you, Madam President, and good morning. My name is Harmony DiFilippo, and I am the budget analyst with DCA. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to present the board with an update on the budget today. I will be speaking to agenda item 6 and the documents included. I would like to start with a quick overview of the fiscal year 22-23 FM6 expenditure projections displayed on page 1. This report includes 2021-22 actual expenditures compared to 22-23 budgeted and projected expenditures. Over this 2-year period, costs have decreased as a result of lower costs in OE&E, which is mainly in AG and OAH costs. For 22-23, the board is projected to spend approximately $18,250,000, of which $8,403,000 is expended on personnel services and $9,847,000 on operating expenses and equipment, OE&E. The next slide on page 2 is the 22-23 revenue projections. And this includes the FM6 budgeted and projected revenue and reimbursements, which we'll go into further in the next slide. The next slide is the fund condition on page 3. The attached fund condition statement is based off of the 2023 governor's budget and has been updated with fiscal month 6 projections. This also includes 2021-22 prior year actual revenues and expenditures, as well as out years, giving you a 5-year view. I will start with the first section on revenues. The board began 2021-22 with a fund balance of $4,449,000 and collected $17,916,000 in revenues, with $5,155,000 from initial license fees, $12,056,000 from license renewals, and $705,000 was collected from the issuance of citations, fines, delinquent fees, and other revenue. For 22-23 current year, the board projects revenues at $22,868,000, with approximately $6,561,000 projected for initial license fees, $15,324,000 from renewal fees, and $983,000 from the issuance of citations, fines, delinquent fees, and other revenues. You'll notice the revenue is projected slightly higher in budget year and static in the out years. I would also like to note that the revenue projections reflect the recent fee increase that went into effect on October 1st of 2022. The next section is expenditures. The board's 22-23 current year expenditures are projected based on FM6 at $17,876,000, which includes reimbursements to the board, shown at the bottom of the expenditure projections on page 1, as well as the revenue projections on page 2. The fund condition projects ongoing expenditures with a 3% growth factor increasing per year. To the extent the board does not fully expend its appropriation, any savings remain in the board's fund, which help the reserve balance. The board notes future legislation or other events could require the board to request additional resources through the annual budget process, which would increase cost pressures on the fund. The last section is the fund balance reserve. The fund balance reserve is the amount of funds remaining at the end of any given fiscal year. The board fund has a statutory fund balance limit of 24 months, but typically 3 to 6 months is considered sufficient. As you can see, the fund balance is healthy and showing growth over the next 3 years. The Budget Office has no concerns and will continue to monitor the budget and provide updates to the board on a regular basis. This concludes my presentation, and I will be available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions at this time? Seeing no questions, thank you so much. Excellent report. We will move on to agenda item 7, education reports, recommendations, and possible actions. Ms. DeYoung?
Good morning. I do have a few updates to report on the Education Division report, and that is starting with section initial approval of new school or program within the first paragraph. So starting with the first paragraph, the report states, from the initial cohort of 9 program applicants who submitted a letter of intent, 6 programs have been approved to start a VN program. We now have 7 of those 9 applicants from this initial cohort which have been approved to start a vocational nursing program. Now, if you look at the second paragraph within the same section of the initial approval of new school or program, within that second paragraph, it states that since the public stakeholder meeting back in October of 22, and after holding the 3 online training sessions to present the new regulations for the program approval process for a new school or program, 5 programs had submitted a complete letter of intent, and 2 of the 5 applicants had been assigned to an NEC. Well, as of March 1st, 2023, we now have 10 programs who have submitted a letter of intent for initial approval of a new school or program. And then 6 of those 10 programs have submitted a complete letter of intent and have also been assigned to an NEC. The last update is with under staff updates. The report stated that 1 candidate had been identified for the vacant full-time program technician position. And as of February 1st, the full-time program technician position was filled. And we are very happy to have our newest staff member join our team. So that concludes my updates from the report. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Ms. DeYoung, I actually do have a question. Of those 5 programs that are moving forward, are all of them for-profit schools, or any of them community colleges or continuing education programs?
I believe all of them are VN private programs, yes.
For-profit schools?
For-profit, correct.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? Do we go into this, or she has a second section to go through?
No, you go on to that's the action item.
Okay. Review and approval of executive officer program decisions for the period of October 18, 2022 to December 13, 2022. Can I have a motion and a second to approve and ratify the executive officer program decisions for the period from October 18, 2022 to December 13, 2022, listed in the report dated February 1, 2023?
So moved.
John Deerking will second.
Thank you. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, any public comment?
Thank you, Madam President. I am opening up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public logged into the meeting would like to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send it to all panelists, or simply raise your hand. And then for participants physically present at the Sacramento location, if you have a comment, please just make your way to the front of the room and use the microphone. We'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Thank you. I will do a roll call and establish who is in favor, opposed, or abstains. Ms. Carpenter?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Durking?
Yes.
Mr. Maxey?
Yes.
Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. Nieblus?
Yes.
Ms. Sanson?
Yes.
And I'm Carol Mountain. I vote yes. That motion is carried unanimously with a vote of 7. Discussion and possible action, high-stakes assessment, Dr. Fairchild and Ms. Gomez.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We would like to present, is it on? Turned off? The light's on. Can you hear? Okay, thank you. We would like to present information and recommendations related to high-stakes testing. Our recommendations are that the board approve further research and analysis of the use and impacts of high-stakes assessment concept as outlined in the memorandum and provide recommendations for future board action, as well as recommending that the board authorize staff to collect, analyze, and share information from California schools regarding the use of high-stakes testing. High stakes is an assessment practice used to determine if a student moves on to the next class or even if they are considered a graduate of the program. Approximately 42% of our programs in the state use a high stakes exit exam or some type of high stakes testing. With a high stakes, then they are considered a non-graduate from their program, which then puts them into either, 1, not even being eligible to take NCLEX, or 2, qualifying through Method 3. With Method 3, the students then have a different type of license. Their licensure may not allow them to get accepted into an RN program. Their licensure may not get them employment. We actually have some employers who will call us to make sure that the student was a graduate of an approved school. Some states do not accept the Method 3 equivalencies. When we look at our pass rates for Method 3, it's grouped in with all of the equivalencies, and there are several different types of equivalencies. Students who take, or candidates who take NCLEX via Method 3 only have about a 40 to 42% chance of passing. Another issue with taking it via Method 3 is it takes longer for licensing to approve their applications and move it on to Pearson VUE. When you are looking at the pass, how soon a student tests, candidates who take NCLEX within 3 weeks have about a 90% probability of passing. If they take NCLEX 90 days or further after eligibility, their pass rate probability drops to 70%. So it is a huge impact on the student as to what they owe in student loans, their ability to move forward in their life. So we're asking for your consideration for more research into high stakes testing.
As Dr. Fairchild stated, out of our 155 programs, we have about 66 of them who have reported to us that, in their annual report, that they are using the high stakes testing. the utilization of the high-stakes assessment during or after, is used during or after the last quarter of the program. This is after they have completed all of the requirements and hours to be able to complete the program. Then they're given this high-stakes exam. In most cases, the students take the high-stakes exam after they have completed everything else. All right. The students pass the exam, they are considered graduates of the program. If they do not pass the exam, they are considered non-graduates. As Dr. Fairchild said, in many of the other states, they are not able to get their licensure because they require a student or an applicant to have graduated from a program, so they're not even eligible in other states for reciprocity or to obtain licensure. Another issue is that in many of the colleges, unless they're a graduate of a nursing program, they are not allowed into an RN, LVN to a BSN program, and so that they need to start at the very beginning to be able to go on for school. Potential potential benefits for the program is they are continuing these students throughout the complete program. They are receiving the money from the students through the whole program. Some of these students may have been struggling from day one, but they are passed through the program, and then when they take the final examination, they're stopped and made as a non-graduate. So in many cases, the programs are gleaning a lot of financial extras from the students that they would be weeding out. Programs may benefit also from utilizing high-stakes assessment during the term or semester with their pass rates. And this gives them a false pass rate because they're keeping the students who may not be able to pass the licensure exam. It stops them from being able to take it. I have one example that just really bothered me recently. One of the programs told me, well, first off, they've only had 4 classes graduate since they started their program. Their first class, they had 7 students and 5 passed. They didn't like the idea that they had a lower pass rate because students did not pass. So while they were waiting for the next group of pass rates, it put them into a different cycle. So for the last 4 quarters, or their average annual pass rate that they have now, it shows 2 classes of students. Both of those classes only had 5 students in each class. Out of those students, 3 were able to take the licensure exam and passed. 2 were put as non-graduates. So this is a 40% number of students who were not allowed to take the exam as a graduate. They also told me that one of the students did not pass the licensure exam by 0.5 point, the high-stakes exam by 0.5 point, but the student did pass the licensure exam on the first try. So they are now considered a non-graduate and will be held to the issues that the non-graduate receives. And so that to me was very disturbing. I'm sorry. Cindy?
Within the report, we gave you several regulations and guidelines by other entities. There's 2 companies that most schools use for NCLEX prep that can be implemented throughout their programs. One of them, ATI, has a very strong recommendation or stance. Their products are not designed to use as high stakes. They are not designed to be the gatekeeper to prevent a student from taking NCLEX. However, a lot of schools utilize their product to say that you didn't pass, that you did not, so you do not move forward. With their product, if a program uses them the way it is designed, their probability of passing NCLEX is 92%. So there is a disconnect or a misstep somewhere with the way the product is used. HESI, they don't have as strong of a statement, but they say the factors that create a negative impact include high grading weight, consequences and or benchmarks established that limits a course or program progression, thereby denying the ability to take a licensure exam. Even organizations such as NCSBN, National League for Nursing, ASIN, which is a nursing accrediting organization, while we don't see, we only have one school in California that is accredited, vocational program accredited by them. All of these programs and organizations say high stakes is not the way to go. It is not, it should be discouraged. It should not be used. So programs have responsibilities to making sure that the student is getting what they need. They need to look at their admissions. Are they admitting the right student? Is the content to the caliber of where it needs to be? Are they looking at the test plan? NCSBN puts the test plan on their website. So there is no reason why a school would say, I don't know what's on the test plan. It's right there. All you have to do is look, and it will tell you what content is going to be on NCLEX. Programs should have strategies and tools in place to identify high-risk students very early in the program. If it's somebody that's coming in with lower passing, if they've identified them in the beginning, if they have a prereq class, these students should be placed into a remediation or support program as soon as possible. If they find them struggling, they need to investigate and find out why, what is going on. Programs should have admission requirements to determine readiness and academic levels needed to pass the program. Nursing school is not easy. It is very strenuous. I had somebody tell me years ago, in nursing school, our life has three things. If you're in nursing school, you have home, work, you have whatever, but you can only do two things during nursing school. You can either play and study, you can have your family and play, but you cannot do all three things at one time. So we need to look at what is happening in a student's life to make sure that we can help them be successful. The mission of the BV and PT is to protect the public. This isn't just our patients, but this is also our nursing students. Vocational nursing students sometimes are coming from the most vulnerable of populations. They're trying to make their life better. These schools already are charging $30,000 to $40,000. And if they are in method 3, okay, excuse my mouth, they are taking their money and they cannot move forward with their life. I would like to leave with you a final thought. This is a quote from an article called The Promise and Peril of High-Stakes Testing in Nursing Education by Dr. Daryl Spurlock. While artificially driving up licensure pass rates may protect the program from regulatory or accreditation actions, progression policies based on high-stakes testing do nothing to improve educational program quality and divert attention from the issues that could be impacting NCLEX pass rates, including poor instructional quality, disruptive or inadequate learning environments, and lack of effective learning resources. In addition, making important educational decisions based on high-stakes test scores directly conflicts with the ethics of acceptable test use. Thank you for listening to us. Do you have any questions?
Thank you so much. That was an excellent report and really appreciate the information. And I do have one quick question. So you said there were 66 programs that are currently using high-stakes testing, and you may not know the answer to this, but I'm just curious. What % of those programs are for-profit, private for-profit schools, do we know?
The majority of them.
That's what I figured, the majority of them. And then I also wanted to ask, do these schools, and you may not know this either, but I just kind of want to get on the record.
Okay.
Do these schools, are they using some kind of an admission criteria, like the TEAS test, and using the cut score appropriately?
Not all programs use TEAS. Some of them will use Wonderlic, and Wonderlic says that the minimum acceptable is 15, but a lot of programs will, 16, 17. I do have a couple of programs that they're now up to 19 and 20. There's another one that some of the ROP programs use, and I've just started hearing about it recently, so I don't know a lot about it, but they're like anywhere from 9th to 11th, 12th grade. I know with my programs, if they're lower on the end, let's look at that.
Yeah, I just wonder about the correlation there. So, and I loved your report, and I read the whole thing, and I just want to say, I love what North Carolina said, that the North Carolina Board of Nursing does not permit the use of any academic external standardized examinations as a determinant or gatekeeper for student course progressions, nor program completion or graduation from a nursing education program. That's very well said. So I appreciate this report, and I believe the idea is that we're going to move this forward, yes?
That's the hope.
Any more questions?
I do have a question. Thank you, Dr. Fairchild. My questions were centered around kind of the equity around this matter. Demographically and also through a geographic lens, where are these schools located that usually use the high stakes? Are they across the state, or they're more centered around certain geographic areas?
It's across the state.
And are there more in certain areas than there are?
I have not really looked as detailed as to where the location are. It just is, for my schools, I've got from way north to way south, and it's evenly distributed.
Same with mine.
And then the results of the folks that have gone through these programs, what's the demographic makeup of them typically? Do we know? Do we have an idea? Majority? Are they folks of color in particular? Are we dealing with?
I really don't have an answer to that. I haven't looked at that as far as the demographics.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, hi, I have a question. Ms. Gomez, you spoke about conducting additional research, correct?
Pardon?
You spoke about conducting additional research? Yes. And I just want to make sure that I didn't miss anything. Can you provide more details on whether or not the criteria or type of measurement was already established on what type of measurement that will be used for the research? Is there a list, or has that been determined?
That hasn't been determined yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions?
Yes, I have a question. This is Nelly Nieblas. I'm wondering, when it comes to, one of your recommendations was to provide support to students that are indicating as struggling. Is there a standardized requirement of support programs across the state for each school to have? Is there an kind of I would say a curriculum that is required to help struggling students established in every school?
Yes, one of our regulations is that they have to have a remediation program. It is not, that is, the regulation is to have remediation, so it is up to the program to set their policy as to what they offer for remediation. And when we do site visits or if we get complaints, that is one of the things that we look at very closely, is that they are following their policy for remediation.
So there isn't a uniform, in community colleges, when a student is not meeting up to par, there's a certain cycle of classes that they have to take in order to meet their freshman level English, freshman level math. So I'm wondering if there's something like that across the state for nursing programs, where there are remedial courses that will bringing them up to a certain level before they can continue.
No, there is nothing uniform. There's nothing in regulation. It is all up to the school to set their policies. I do have some programs that if they don't meet the admission requirements, they do offer a remediation reading English program, and that is a public ROP program that offers that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions?
Just follow up as far as definitions. As a high-stakes assessment, this would be, as you indicated in the report, the practice of basing major decisions on individual student performance relative to the single assessment event. And the expectations, of course, for clinically ready graduates have clearly increased over the past several years, especially as we're moving through the pandemic. And this kind of parallels challenges in the NCLEX itself with increasingly challenging questions to prepare students for professional nursing practice. So the use of some program as far as standardized tests, could you agree that it holds students accountable for learning expectations?
Yes, the implementation of standardized testing, the support programs are all great ways to add added information, added support for your program, but it is not a gatekeeper to prevent a student from moving forward.
Yes, of course. And obviously we have great patient safety implications here.
Correct.
And the board here, of course, is charged with consumer protection, not only for the students to make sure that we have a quality program, but also the consumers, the end users, the patients that the students will be serving. Yeah, so thank you very much for the presentation.
You're welcome.
May I make one comment on that? And that is the majority ATI or HESI, if it's used throughout the program, where they have assessments and testing and quizzes for the students to be able to use. They have assignments for the students to use.
Of course.
That is a great addition to the programs where the student can learn from the ATI and HESI along with their curriculum. Using it through the program and then using it at the green light at the end can assist some students to make it through the program. But when it's just a high-stakes test at the very end and they do not get the benefit of having any of these quizzes or assignments through the program, that hampers the students. So it can help if they have the full program.
Yeah, I am more comfortable with the ATI program than I am the HESI, but ATI starts with, they have the T's for entrance, which tests math, reading, comprehensions, even science. But through each, they have fundamentals, they have pharmacology, they have med-surg, OB, peds, that they have activities that go with it. They have quizzes that the student can take on their own. They have proctored assessments. They have other learning tutorials. They have a great product on pharmacology that is like sitting in a one-on-one pharmacology class. They offer at the end of their program a 6 to 8 week review, depending if it's LVN or RN, that is spent one-on-one with the an ATI NCLEX coach. They have a 12-week program that is a one-on-one, and everything is based on what the student needs to prepare them and help them move forward in preparation for NCLEX.
Thank you. So just as a follow-up, the testing then is an adjunct to classroom instruction and not a substitute for it. In other words, we're not teaching to the test.
Exactly.
I just want to support what you just said about ATI and HESI with their case studies and all their additional activities. And not only that, but it's cost effective for the student if they have the whole package.
Yes.
Because I don't know if people are aware, but the independent apps that are on the students' phones run around $40 a month for a student just to do additional NCLEX-style questions. And so if they get that whole package, it actually is cost-effective for the student, and they get that 6 to 8 weeks of NCLEX-style testing that they can work on while they're preparing to take boards. So it's a cost-effective deal for the student as well.
When it's used appropriately and not used as a stopgate.
Yes.
Exactly, and that's what you're saying. We want it used appropriately. We don't want it used to skew the results of the testing for the schools, which
Exactly.
is
Exactly.
what you're talking about. Excellent. Thank you so much. Any other questions or comments from the board members? Any public comment?
Thank you, Madam Board President. I am opening up the question and answer panel. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen or simply raise your hand. For those members of the public participating in person, please come forward to the front of the room so you can use the microphone. All right, I'm seeing no requests for comment. Shall I close the question and answer panel?
Yes, thank you so much.
You're welcome. And it does look like you have some logged in board members with questions, Nellie and Beth.
Ms. Nieblis?
Yes, I was wondering if there was something we could do for the public schools. I know under public law, people that might have hidden disabilities can access programs and assessments through the community colleges and different nonprofits in California to get assessed for learning disabilities. There might be some students that are in the nursing programs that have undiagnosed learning disabilities and might need some assessment. And I'm wondering if we could put in regulation a certain standard that certain students need to certain classes or certain levels of scores that a student must pass before entering the NCLEX or the other tests that they have to have for those that are remedial. Some state regulation that will require them to do these classes before they can even do the entrance to the nursing exam.
I think that would be something that would need to look at further discussion and review of regulation and how it could be implemented. ATI themselves, if they have a student with learning disabilities, they can give them added time. A student can also, when they submit their application to take NCLEX, can submit an application to the board as well as to Pearson VUE for accommodations.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Seeing no further comment? Oh, I'm sorry. Is there further comment? Ms. DeYoung?
Hi, this is Beth DeYoung, Supervising Nursing Education Consultant. And first, I just wanted to thank Dr. Fairchild and Ms. Gomez for the presentation. And there was a statement made that I really want to make sure that we hit on, and that was how the program receives full tuition from all the students completing the approved prescribed course of study, but they are not held accountable for the licensure examinations for these Method 3 applicants. This process may produce an artificially higher pass rates for these programs that are using the high-stake exit exam, because applicants who have to apply under Method 3, they are not calculated within the program's average annual pass rate. So if a program has multiple students that do not pass the exit exam and have to apply for licensure, under the Method 3, they are not calculated within that average annual pass rate for the program. Thank you.
Ms. DeYoung, I think that's really important that everybody understand that so many of the private schools send their students in a package, in a clump, to show how many people have graduated. And I didn't realize what you just said, that those students that they say, well, you didn't pass the high stakes testing, so you don't get to go in under our school, they're not even part of that then. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct. The school that I was describing to you, they're sitting with 100% pass rate that had only 60% of their students able to test.
Okay, that's a really important point. Thank you for making that and clarifying it. Clarified it for me, for sure. Any other comments or questions at this time? Okay.
Probably want to restate the motion.
Can I have a motion to approve the report and adopt the recommendations in a second?
I would move to receive the report and adopt the recommendations of the NECs regarding high-stakes assessment concept.
Excellent.
Second the motion.
Thank you so much. We'll now do a roll call vote. Oh, I'm sorry. Any public comment?
Thank you, Madam President. I will open up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists, or simply raise your hand. Again, if there are any public members present at the physical location, just make your way to the front of the room. We'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we will now do a roll call vote. Ms. Carpenter?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Durking?
Yes.
Mr. Maxey?
Yes.
Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. Niebles?
Yes.
She's not here. Ms. Sonson?
Yes.
And I'm Carol Mountain, and I vote yes. The motion is carried by a unanimous vote of 7. We will now move on to number 7C. That would be request to admit students. Healthcare Career College Vocational Nursing Program, Ms. De La Rosa.
Good morning. Regarding the report about Healthcare Career College Vocational Nursing Program, the only update I have is that they have a new program director. Otherwise, everything else is the same. You have my report. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer it.
Can I have a motion to approve the report and adopt the recommendations in a second?
I would so move.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any comment from representatives of the program?
I believe the director is online.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, this is Elizabeth Estrada, and I just want to say that I'm very happy to be of service again. I just was the DON this last week, and I've been working with Charlene, and I'm happy to be of service again. I do have some comments on the report, and maybe I can ask Charlene that do I need to submit a new report with my name on there as the director of nursing? So that's one question. And the other is that the program has been very stable and the faculty is strong, and I'm looking forward to be of service again to the college and the board. I do have one question, and that is I would like to extend the start date, and perhaps I can be, do I request it here? I would like to extend it to May 1st, which gives us another month for screening and selection. So that's the only comment. I'm just pleased to be working again as the director of nursing for Healthcare Career College. I was their director many years ago, 2011 to 2015, when it was called Infotech Career College. And I'm pleased to see the school growing. And that's really the only comment and questions that I have. Thank you.
Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you for your question. There is no need to update the report. I noted the update about the change in the program director, and that should suffice. And you wanted to change the start date to May 1st.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes, that gives us another month. I can't hear you. Oh, there.
Yeah. Okay. That's okay. Well, we can talk about that change.
Okay. I just didn't know what the procedure was now on how to extend the date.
Well, the current recommendation is for a start date of July 17th,
Right.
2023. Are you asking to advance the start date to May of 2023?
Yes, because right now, as it stands, it's March of 2023, and I just want to give us a month for more screening and selection. Since I just joined the college, it gives us another month to, refine our procedures.
Okay.
So,
the request that I received from the previous director is the one that is written in the report, and that is for July 17, 2023.
Oh, no, I didn't see that. I only saw the, okay, July 17th. Wow, that's a long ways. Can we discuss that, or do we need to decide this right now? Because I'll talk with my executive board.
May I just ask, what was Ms. Estrada's understanding as to the start date as recommended by the NEC?
When I looked up the history, that you posted on the website, the last approval that was done was for the 20 to be brought in on April 2023.
Okay.
Oh no, March 2023, and that's
Okay,
only a
I'm
month away, and that doesn't give me much time. So I just wanted to see if I could extend it for about a month.
So just to clarify, the pending motion is for a start date of July 17th, 2023. And you're requesting to advance that date to sometime in May of 2023, is that correct?
That's correct.
I think I understand what she's asking. There was,
correct.
on the previous board report, they were approved to start on March 13, 2023. So that was already approved. So that's a projected one. So the one that I'm asking for, that the program director requested for approval, was for a July 17 start. So the March 13 was already approved in the previous board meeting. So the one that we're talking about right now, Elizabeth, is for the next one. So what you're trying to ask, I just wanted to clarify, is not for this request, but for the previous one that was approved last board meeting for
That's
the
right.
March start. You want that to move that into May, is that correct?
Correct, May 1st.
Okay, all right.
That action cannot be taken today because it isn't on the agenda for that request. So that would have to be taken up at a future date.
So this is, just to clarify, this is actually a second request, second start date for the class.
Correct.
So can Ms. Estrada speak to the current recommended start date of July 17th, 2023?
I will have to check with my executives. They probably have another group coming in at that time. They did not let me know what their final plan was, given that I've only been there for a week. So
Then this has to be
I will
withdrawn.
clarify that.
Okay, so I just wanted to clarify. So this request was sent to me last December by the previous director.
Yeah.
So for a July start. So you're saying right now that you do not want this July start to be approved? Is that correct?
No, I do not. No, I want to leave it the same until I double
Okay.
check
Okay.
with the college. Yes.
So we're withdrawing the action.
No. She said she would leave it the same. So you would want to move forward with the request that is currently for the July start?
Yes. Until I
Alright.
can, I can verify. But the only one that I was asking to change was the one that was done last year to start in March.
Okay, so as Attorney Swenson has mentioned, we cannot discuss that today because that's not in the agenda.
Okay.
Are we going forward with this?
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
All right.
Thank
Any
you.
other comments from the board? Let's see, are we still on public comment? No.
Questions from board, then public comment.
Any questions from the board, further questions from the board? All right, seeing none, any public comment?
Thank you, Madam Board President. I'm opening up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists, or simply raise your hand. If you are in person at the meeting, please just make your way to the front of the room. We'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we will now take a roll call vote. Ms. Carpenter?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Durking?
Yes.
Mr. Maxey?
Abstain.
Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. Needless?
Abstain?
Ms. Sonson?
Yes.
And I will vote yes.
Yeah, you have to have majority voting.
So we will have 2 people who abstained and 5 yeses, which will make the motion carry. We will move on to 7D, reconsideration of provisional approval, request to admit students for college vocational nursing program. Dr. Fairchild.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Dr. Fairchild, is there any additional or new information to your report?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the report and adopt the recommendations and a second?
Move to approve.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Is there a comment from representatives of the program?
I have no comments. However, I would like to thank the board members and most especially to our NEC, Dr. Fairchild, for her continued support. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You identify yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Annabelle Velasco from CNI College.
And are you the director there?
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And further comments?
No, ma'am.
Are there any questions from the board or discussion? Seeing none, any public comment?
Thank you, Madam Board President. I'm opening up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and submit it to all panelists, or simply raise your hand. If you're in person, please make your way to the front of the room. We'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We will now do a roll call vote. Ms. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Durking?
Yes, and congratulations to the program.
Thank you. Mr. Maxey?
Yes, congratulations.
Thank you.
Ms. Moore?
Yes, congratulations.
Thank you.
Ms. Nieblus?
Yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Sonson?
Yes, thank you.
And I'm Carol Mountain. I vote yes, and I also say congratulations.
Thank
Good
you,
job.
ma'am. Thank you.
That motion carries unanimously by a vote of 7. We will now move on to Agenda Item 8, Executive Officer's Report. Ms. Yamaguchi.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. You've had my written report in front of you. There's not anything to add to that just yet, but I would pause to see if anybody had any questions first. Okay. The one thing that we did flag, of course, was the board committee assignment, and we discussed this a little bit yesterday at the board's training day. I did want to make certain that all the board members indicated their request, preference, desire for a committee assignment. We do very much need our board's committees to be fully appointed and active. There's a lot of work to go around this coming year. So technically, we have appointed 2 board members to each of the committees, except for the Education and Practice Committee, to which we have appointed 4. That committee does meet in public or in a hybrid situation like this, but it is fully noticed to the public through the Bagley-Keene Act. I did receive a few written requests, and generally speaking, again, the procedure from here is as soon as the executive committee meets, they will look at all the requests and create a structure, if you will. So I did want to mention that unless we hear otherwise, within the next, I would say, a couple of weeks, the president and vice president would be recommended to make the appointments as requested and then fill in so that we have a full committee structure to be able to operate. Obviously, a committee member, a board member would have the right to decline, of course, but I would humbly ask that we fully engage the board members. Like I said, there will be a lot to do with the upcoming policy work, updating and evaluating our strategic plan, and the very important, not to be understated, mission of the board overseeing the functions of the staff, evaluating our trends, our performance measures, and making certain that we are operating as efficiently and transparently as we possibly can. And I'd pause again here for questions or comments. No? All right.
Seeing no board discussion or questions, any public comment?
Thank you, Madam President. I'm opening up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on Agenda Item 8, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen or simply raise your hand. If you're present in person, please make your way to the front of the room. We'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
And we will move on to Agenda Item 9, Board Update from DCA, Brian Clifford.
Good morning. Again, Brian Clifford, Department of Consumer Affairs Executive Office. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to provide the DCA update today. The first item that I would like to talk about is DCA's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Steering Committee. The committee is focused on training, and over the next few months, all staff, including our trainers and board and bureau executives, will receive DEI training, and regular and recurring training opportunities will be available. In fact, today, DCA's Solid Training Team is leading a full day of training for DCA's steering committee. The training includes 4 training modules: understanding the value of DEI in the workplace, learning to navigate diverse conversations, decoding our unconscious biases, and unleashing the power of generational differences. On March 21st, as part of the Director's Quarterly Meeting, executive officers and bureau chiefs will attend an hour-and-a-half DEI leadership training to gain a general understanding of diversity, equity, inclusion, and what it means as a leader and regulator within DCA. In late April, the Solid Trainers will be DEI certified and will offer DEI-related trainings to all employees by June. DCA's Solid Planning Team is in the final stages of updating its strategic planning process, which includes an equity analysis. Environmental scan surveys and analyses will include DEI-related questions to assist boards and bureaus in developing DEI-related goals and objectives as part of their strategic plans. To further assist the boards and bureaus, sample DEI objectives will be provided. A training video, as well as videos from the DCA Director and our agency secretary, are in the works to explain their perspectives on DEI and how it relates to the board's roles as regulators and policymakers. To improve public access, DCA is creating a centralized web page that will house all board and bureau strategic plans. These new DEI components have been finalized, and Sol will begin working with DCA's boards and bureaus to develop new strategic plans or update existing ones. As new information becomes available, we will keep your executive officer informed. Moving on to training, now is a great time to review all necessary board member trainings and submit your certificates of completion to your executive officer and DCA at memberrelations@dca.ca.gov. There are 2 DCA-wide mandatory trainings for 2023. This includes sexual harassment prevention training and information security awareness. All employees and appointees, including board members, will need to complete the sexual harassment prevention training this year. The training is required every odd-numbered year and is approximately 2 hours. In addition, if you are assigned a DCA email at dca.ca.gov, you are required to complete Information Security Awareness Fundamentals 2023 training. Information Security Awareness training addresses everyone's role in protecting DCA's data and information. This training is online and required annually. Both the sexual harassment prevention training and information security awareness training are available in the department's learning management system, which we commonly refer to as LMS. Both trainings can be accessed online at any time. Additionally, board members must complete Board Member Orientation Training, or BMOT, within the first year of appointment or reappointment, ethics training within 6 months of appointment and every 2 years thereafter, and defensive driver training within the first year and every 4 years. For your convenience, these trainings are offered multiple times a year in a variety of formats. And specifically for BMOT, it is being offered this month on March 22nd as a live virtual day of training. The next BMOT is scheduled for June 20th and may potentially be held live in person in Sacramento. The last BMOT of the year is scheduled for October 10th. More information will be available soon. Again, members can sign up using DCA's LMS. For more information, a mandatory trainings page has been created to help members identify, access, and track specified trainings. The page includes direct links to mandatory trainings as well as pertinent information and policies specific to these training courses. The pages are available via DCA's Board Member Resource Center under Required Board Member Training. And you can always reach out to Melissa Gear for assistance. And then lastly, board and committee members are required to file a Statement of Economic Interest, Form 700, within 30 days of their appointment annually and within 30 days of leaving office. This year's annual filing period covers the 2022 calendar year. The official deadline for filing is Friday, April 1st, 2023. To ensure compliance, DCA requests that Form 700 filers complete the e-filing by Friday, March 15th. You should have recently received an email from NetFile with instructions on how to file your annual Form 700. If you have any questions, of course, again, reach out to Member Relations. And then finally, DC and the Board and Bureau Relations team look forward to working with you and assisting you through this new year. We are here to support you and the important work you do. Please feel free to reach out anytime. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the President and happy to answer or try to answer any questions you have.
Any questions from the board?
Madam Chair, if I could add something, though, Mr. Clifford mentioned the BMOT training. If our new members and returning members need to take this training, we'd be happy to help you get registered for that. So just you can email myself, Mr. Ito, Ms. Ball, all three of us, and we'll help you get registered and set up for that.
Thank you. At this time, we will take a 10-minute break and reconvene at 11:45.
All right.
Ready to move on to agenda item 10, licensing and evaluations, report, recommendations, and possible actions. Ms. Shelley Brown.
Good morning. So the licensing division report is in your packet. I don't really have anything to add, except that our processing times have been really great, and that my licensing supervisors and my staff have been doing an amazing job. Does anyone have any questions?
I would like the board to know that over the past several months, just the phone service numbers have been well in the 90 percentile every day, with the exception of one day when we had no power.
Well, yes. I don't think anyone had power in Natomas.
All right, any further questions? Thank you so much for your report.
Thank you.
Agenda item 11, legislative and regulations report, recommendations, and possible actions. Ms. Carpenter.
I apologize. I was not quite prepared. Yes, Doris Perez. We have not had a committee meeting, but the legislative and regulations staff has been hard at work. Can you give us an update, please?
Oh, how about now? Wanted to confirm that we did ask for public comment on the licensing and evaluations report. Opportunity for public comment? Oh, okay. Okay.
I can give a public comment. It was so nice to hear the presentations of Mr. Hull and Mr. Berkman yesterday, as well as Ms. Brown. You know, we don't give enough credit to staff for the hard work that really keeps us in business here. So, and thank you for your leadership, Ms. Yamaguchi.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Carpenter. Elaine and I are going to be sharing this report about this season's legislative bills. And she'll start with 11A and just give us an overview of what she is seeing this season and what her impressions are.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and I'm going to try really hard to be succinct, but you people all know that that's just not in my strong suit. Friday, February 17th was the deadline to introduce new bills, and literally thousands were introduced. It's typical this time of the year, especially the beginning of the two-year session. Most of the bills contain only intent or spot language, and right now the houses are working to make sure that everything gets assigned to committees. And it's really difficult to speculate, you know, even though I am a gambling woman, what bills will move forward in the process and what they'll look like as they move. And often, again, this time of the year, the beginning of the two-year session, committees will often move things out that don't have a great deal of substance yet. That being said, we did identify several dozen bills that we would like to watch, and several that we will very, very possibly place before the board for unofficial position. Just, you know, rather than a long, long list at this point, I did want to note, though, that there were a few kind of buckets, if you will, that we noted. The one being, of course, for student debt and free tuition. There's a lot of interest in career technical education funding and structure. There were a number of bills pertaining to DCA and state boards in terms of reporting, accountability, and appointments. And there were, of course, a number of bills regarding nursing and healing arts, education, fees, and licensure. So there, like I said, there's a number of them that we're going to want to, I think, dig a little deeper and work through the committee, of course. Now, just in terms of time frame, and this is where I'm going to probably get much too bombastic. At this point in time, most of the bills have to follow the 30-day deadline before they're allowed to be heard. And then everything gets really compressed toward the end of this month to the end of April, really. Although they do go out, the legislature goes out for a 1-week break. And in the meantime, they're also working assiduously on the budget. Now, May 19 is the deadline for fiscal committees to report bills out to the House floors, and a lot of this happens kind of in what's referred to as the suspense file tradition, which means that they hold everything and make one long day of decisions that reflect their recommended spending patterns for the entire year. So between May 30 and June 2, both houses will have only floor sessions, and they won't meet unless, of course, there's like a special waiver to meet off the floor. And by midnight, June 2, both houses need to pass out all the bills that were introduced in their house. So, and again, June 5, they start the committee process again, but between then and June 15, when the budget must be approved, they're going to be concentrating mostly on that. So, of course, the caveats, and anybody who's been following anything having to do with legislature, politics, et cetera, you do know, of course, that waivers can be requested at any time, any place, especially if they have bipartisan support. I'd like to note, though, that committee bills don't always have to be subject to those tight deadlines, and they can sort of circumvent, well, I won't say circumvent, they can have separate procedures. And again, that's often the case if they have bipartisan support. And so right now, you know, what I would recommend is that once our Leg and Regs committee is appointed, we will be putting together a much more granular list of bills with recommendations for potential action. I think we'll be probably trying to set a priority schedule of things that we want to take a look at, things that we want to just keep an eye on, and things that we're really going to want to dig into and report back, even if it's not for an official board action, but to make certain that the board members are aware of what's going on. I think in that committee structure document, I believe it says that the Leg and Regs committee may decide to meet more than once between board meetings to discuss bills. This would be the time to do that if we're going to do that. We certainly will be keeping everybody apprised of that. And I also want to make certain that the other committees knew that things that are really deeply ingrained in those policy areas may be showing up on their agendas as well. Now, here's the part where I think I would ask the board to consider a motion, and that's if there are bills that are going to require BBMPT to act before May 19, our board meeting. I would strongly recommend that the board delegate the interim authority to the executive committee to direct staff to take action and ratify the committee's decisions at that May 19 meeting. Mr. Swenson, there's a way to do that?
Yes, the full board can, through motion, delegate the authority for the executive committee to take those actions and report back out at the next board meeting following the decision for ratification. If that happens and the board is, the committee is exercising that delegated authority, then even though it's only a two-person committee, there would have to be notice and agenda posted for those executive committee meetings.
May I have clarification on that? So we can delegate the authority, but it would require a noticed motion of the committees to act in the interim and then report at the next board meeting for ratification?
That's correct,
oh, okay.
So we can continue to discuss, or unless you want to ask for the motion now.
I would so move.
I think that's done. Do we need a second?
Please.
Second.
Thank you. And a vote, correct?
Public comment.
Can we open that for public comment, please?
Thank you, Madam President. I'm opening up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists, or simply raise your hand. If you're in person, you may move to the front of the room. We'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Since there are no further comments, we will take a roll call vote. Ms. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Durking?
Yes.
Mr. Maxey?
Yes.
Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. Niebles?
Yes.
Thank you. And Ms. Sonson?
Yes.
Carol Mountain, I vote yes. That is carried by a unanimous vote of 7.
Much appreciated. Did I miss anything, or did you want to provide some specific comments on anything that you were noticing?
Back to your framing of certain themes, AKA buckets. These are thematic trends that both Elaine and I had observed. What's kind of fun about working with her is, number one, there's a lot to learn, but number two, we kind of do our searching and mining for bills of interest to the board independently, and then we convene together and have this very cool workshop collaboration. And so what's funny is when we compare our lists, she's got things I don't have, and I have things that she didn't have on her list. One reason I wasn't able to join you yesterday is because I was attending Department of Consumer Affairs Legislative Roundtable. It's the kickoff of the season, and so there was a lot of really interesting bills discussed, and I really didn't want to miss that because I did want to report in on that today. So we are seeing from both houses a lot of open meeting bills, and they're coming from both the Senate and Assembly authors, and they're very similar in that they wish to permanently institute the hybrid that we got to experience during the pandemic and that we're actually experiencing today. We have, it appears, and Ken Swenson might want to comment on this, there's a couple new bills that would institute new boards within the Department of Consumer Affairs, one of which is athletic trainers, and the other one has to do with allied health professions. So did you want to comment on that?
With regard to athletic trainers?
Yes, please.
Yes, so there isn't currently a license issued by a DCA entity with respect to athletic trainers. The Athletic Commission does not issue licenses for athletic trainers, so it would actually be the establishment of a new board and practice act that would regulate that. So it would be akin, although not as advanced as a physical therapist.
So that's not something we would necessarily be following on behalf of the board. It's more of a point of interest. Probably one of the more compelling and very relevant bills that I would love to mention, and Elaine will also probably have a few things to say, is AB 1722. This bill specifically affects licensed vocational nurses except through the vehicle of the Education Code. As introduced by Daley, the school nurse requirements per Education Code are being amended to include licensed vocational nurses. The criteria of Section 442.67.5 remains nearly identical as it was written, that being a baccalaureate or higher degree, a valid California license as a registered nurse. The modified text includes vocational nurse. The third prong of that requirement asks for and requires 1 year of coursework beyond the baccalaureate degree in a program approved by the commission. So Elaine pointed this out, found it of great interest, and we will be following this on behalf of the board. Not because we believe we have any current obligation at this time. We want to watch it as it develops through committee.
I have a quick question. So are those going to be the same qualifications? So for an RN, it's a bachelor's degree and 1 year additional school nurse credential. Those won't be the same qualifications for the LVN? That didn't make sense in my mind. Did they clarify that at all?
Not yet.
Not yet.
That's hence the watch, because what they are doing is they are, the assumption here is that a vocational nurse would have a baccalaureate degree. And generally not.
Not necessarily. Yeah.
Not necessarily, right. So there does seem to be some awkward equations here that don't really match up. But it's the very beginning as introduced, so we'll just watch it. And if they ask, for example, for expertise from this board, we may be in a position to provide them some data and some information.
As a point of interest, there's also been a large grant that's been written to assist LVNs to move to the baccalaureate level as an RN to be able to get into the school nurse system and move smoothly up to that continuum. So I wonder if that's going to be part of that. But thank you for mentioning this. It's very interesting.
I'd be interested in learning more about that grant.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah, I would assume there's going to be a lot of conversations about this bill and this topic.
Elaine, was there anything else you recommended that I bring forward of interest?
Nope, at this point.
Okay.
Thanks.
Excuse me, who's the author again on 1722?
Megan Dolly,
Interesting.
up in your neighborhood?
Yes.
Oh. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I said there will certainly be some conversation.
There will be, and I know her chief of staff up there.
Even better.
Excellent.
Are we on C or are we moving forward to 12?
We're on B.
Or are we still on B, implementation of 2021 chaptered bills? Ms. Yamaguchi?
Yes. Ah, yes. Now this is very interesting. SB 1436, I beg your pardon. I think most of the board members will remember that we had a special meeting December 9th to discuss proposed regulatory language from the Respiratory Care Board to implement their bill 1436. At the time, their proposed language dealt mostly with the scope of a licensed vocational nurse or other who could provide some respiratory care services. Now, the board did authorize us to present our concerns and viewpoints, which we did provide in writing. And I understand that they received a great amount of public comment as well, and initially had been planning to have a public hearing. Now, in the ensuing months, a number of things have come about, and for one thing, the Respiratory Care Board convened a stakeholder meeting and had a very lively conversation with folks who were from the industry, from the home health care, from the employers, from families, some training, people who engage in the sort of training for nurses to provide respiratory care. It was a really good conversation, and I thought it brought up a lot of potential pathways. I also know anecdotally that the executive officer of RCB has had many conversations over the past couple of months with, again, stakeholders, families, people in the industry. And so what has happened is that the RCB plans to meet on the 9th, and they are moving a new proposal through. They would like to ask their board to authorize seeking new legislation that don't have that specific carve-out for home health care that 1436 carried, and to further develop, I think, the aspects of training. So in other words, they're looking to make provisions that go beyond just the nurses' roles in home health care, but including more skilled nursing, congregate care, the other nursing settings. their proposal is very, very interesting because it's moved in, I think, many positive directions, and I think it's going to be something that we're going to want to, if not vocally support, we're certainly going to be following with interest, because this is actually, I think, moving towards something that we can very, very enthusiastically work together with, and that makes me extremely happy. So at this point, action-wise, by the way, as I said, the Respiratory Care Board will be meeting on the 9th, and their executive officer will ask the board for support to move forward to ask for new legislation. They hope to ask for a committee bill, which, as I think I said earlier, would indicate bipartisan support. It would indicate that this is a non-controversial change in the way they move forward. And it also kind of gets to skirt some of the time limits, which is smart. So what I would suggest, of course, at this point is, one, I will send out the link to the RCB's agenda package that has some better detailed information on this proposal. But we'll be watching this because even committee bill notwithstanding, there are still loudly ticking clocks here. So my suggestion here would definitely be what I would recommend the board consider doing today is really, again, is similar to what we had just talked about in terms of the general legislative calendar as a whole. But this bill in particular, I believe, once it's introduced, it will get moved quickly. And I think just on the natural, I think if it's introduced before the end of March, it could very well be heard in committee by the end of April and then move through the appropriations process into the floor to meet the House of Origin deadline. That wouldn't necessarily allow us to go through our, already calendared process for the board meeting on May 19. It would be a little bit too tight, I think. So this would be actually, I think, a very, very prime candidate for working through that interim process that we discussed a few minutes ago. So as I would suggest, we would be watching for this bill to be formally introduced and continue to work with RCB. And like I said, I'm very encouraged and very hopeful about this because I think this goes a long, long way to set up a system that we will be able to work very productively, that we would not be putting anybody at risk for, having to move out of home care into a hospital, things like that. So, like I said, I'm very, very hopeful. The RCB executive officer has said pretty clearly that this proposal is a work in progress. And again, by nature of the process, legislative process going forward, I know that we would like very much to get this put into statute as quickly as possible, as well as possible, because it goes without saying that both of our boards are going to have to write some regs afterward. So, but like I said, this also means that she could very well, with the author's permission, the committee's permission, it could even take 2 years, the full 2-year session, to work out a whole plan. And but so, like I said, at this point, we don't really know exactly how that's going to go, which is why we wouldn't want to propose an action today beyond just making the provision for some timely action as we go forward for the rest of this year. Madam Chair? Actually, did I?
I apologize. You covered it all and then some. I had a quick question. As far as the vehicle, do you think this will be a spot bill, or do you think it will fit into one of several of DCA's omnibus bills that are still to be developed?
I know that they hope to ask for a committee bill, a separate committee bill. Whether or not they actually put their proposed language in immediately or just put in intent language, I don't know. And it may well be that that's decided by the board. It also may well be that the committee itself will say, not yet. So, but that's a great question.
Rulemaking update, Ms. Pierce?
I would,
What?
I
You
had-
have part
I had
two.
a recommendation for,
My apologies.
to make sure that, the board could delegate that interim responsibility to the executive committee, especially for this bill.
For this bill.
Yes, proposed bill.
So since,
Do I need to do that separately, or can the prior action take place?
Since we don't have a bill with specific language, it's not ripe to take up as a separate item at this point. I think that the prior motion would cover this as well as any other bills that are pending.
Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Swenson. So we are moving on to
Yes.
Rulemaking update, Ms. Pierce.
I believe we have B2, Elaine reporting in on implementation of SB 994. Pardon me?
Yes, I forgot that. There isn't actually a whole lot to report in terms of 994, as the board will call. This bill authorized naturopathic doctors to hire and supervise and direct vocational nurses the way that an RN or a medical doctor would. At this point in time, our staff has worked with council to pull together some proposed memoranda of understanding between our two boards in terms of how to go forward in terms of the enforcement processes, and then also how to, share information, but also I think to put together a sample or recommended professional agreement between a hiring naturopathic doctor and a vocational nurse. So at this point, we haven't been able to make any progress beyond putting those things up in the air. But I'd be delighted to answer any questions.
Do we have any idea how many VNs are currently, because we knew there was a big rush right when it happened, right? Do we have any idea how many VNs are currently being employed by naturopathic doctors?
Not a clue.
Just curious.
Yeah, not a clue.
Although I think there's around 1,000, give or take, naturopathic doctors in California licensed.
That's right. So if you assume that there were a specific number of naturopathic doctors who would have the wherewithal, the practice structure to hire a vocational nurse, that places us somewhere in the, let's just say 300 to 500 number, potentially. But in the meantime, I did forget one thing, that I do know that we have sent some information out to our current schools and colleges to let them know that this is a new potential employment area for their students, and that they may wish to look into additional curricula.
That's an interesting idea. Okay. Any further board discussion or questions? Any public comment?
Thank you, Madam Board President. I am opening up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and submit it to all panelists, or simply raise your hand. If you are in person, please make your way to the front of the room. We'll give you a moment.
Good.
All right, I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
I believe we are ready to move on to agenda item 12, enforcement report recommendations and possible actions. Mr. Maxey and Mr. Maxey.
I believe we have the rulemaking report next.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, rulemaking update.
Item C1, 11C1.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Oh, I apologize.
Thank you. All right, and then I'll get out of your hair and you can get on to something exciting like enforcement. So I'm happy to report that the Certificate of Compliance rulemaking for AB 1536, which is the new program approval process, has just recently been approved by agency. We will be publishing this in the California Regulatory Notice Register on March 10. I am currently working with Office of Administrative Laws, one of their most seasoned analysts, yesterday and today to finalize some modifications to that notice, and we're right on track. This public notice is very different from the emergency rulemaking which preceded it. The emergency rulemaking had a public notice lasting only 5 days. This will be the full 45 days, ending on April 25th. During this time, I will be receiving written public comment or request for public hearing. And once the 45-day public comment is complete, I will work with our councils and present the public comment and the recommended responses to the board. That may happen at our next board meeting or possibly in the interim, depending on how things go. So we're very excited to get this wrapped up. As usual, DCA's councils, both general and regulatory, have been essential in any of our rulemakings, so we thank them. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much. Any board questions or discussions on this? Any public comment?
Thank you, Madam Board President. I'm opening up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and submit it to all panelists, or simply raise your hand. If you are in person, simply go to the front of the room. Thank you. We'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
And now I believe we are ready to move on to the Enforcement Division report. Ms. Wood.
Good morning. My name is Antoinette Wood. I'm the Enforcement Division Chief. You do have my Enforcement Division report. Does anyone have any questions? The only thing I have to report out is going to be for our petitioner hearings. I wanted to let you know that we have had 135 total hearings have been completed since February of 2021. Had we stayed on the same track without board intervention, we would be at 40. We currently have 22 hearings pending, 13 cases with a hearing date, and 9 cases waiting for a hearing date. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Wood?
Just a comment, Ms. Wood and Mr. Prouty, wonderful presentation yesterday, very informative. Thank you.
Thank you.
I second that. Enforcement Committee report, Mr. Maxey.
Thank you. The Enforcement Committee is excited to update the board on its recent work. I'll start with the enforcement cost savings. As discussed at the prior board meeting, the Enforcement Division has implemented several cost-saving measures. This includes changing the license applicant case review unit from staff service analyst to program technician, and turning the staff service manager into a special investigator, and an AGPA into an SI. The cost savings for the SSAs to the PTs will save an average of $6,500 per month. Excuse me. The additional SIs have allowed the SI's unit to take back 77 cases. Since it costs approximately $220 per hour for DOI to conduct the investigation, the BVNPT has saved almost $300,000. The Enforcement Committee is committed to finding and implementing additional opportunities for cost savings. Moving on to enforcement outreach. As discussed at prior board meetings, the Enforcement Division is working on outreach in an effort to keep licensees from having to participate in the enforcement process. This includes sending out an email reminder before Christmas and New Year's about an intoxicated driving, updating the website to include more information about the enforcement process, and working on new PSAs. For example, the next PSAs will be on substance abuse in nursing, licensees and the enforcement processes, and then also probation licensees' roles and responsibilities. The Enforcement Division is also working with the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation to outreach to licensees who are interested in obtaining a state job. The Enforcement Division hopes that by working with the licensees, we will see fewer cases such as these. Any questions from my fellow board members?
No, but kudos on working on those new videos. That's a excellent, each one of those topics really important, so thank you.
And I just want to commend Ms. Wood and her team. They're doing an excellent job. We've seen so much tremendous work being done from her and her team. So thank you, and particularly around the diversity, equity, inclusion work you guys are all doing as well.
Thank you so much.
Are there other questions or comments? I believe we have I as a separate disciplinary guidelines update.
Yes, so with the disciplinary guidelines, we are working on them. We have sent them over to Headquarters Legal for review. We anticipate that they will be back to us for our next Enforcement Committee meeting. We're hoping that the Enforcement Committee will give us feedback and move things to either the Legislative Committee or the full board, depending on how many committee members we have and what meetings we are able to go through.
Thank you. Are there questions from the board? Any public comment?
Thank you, Madam Board President. I am opening up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, or simply raise your hand. If you are in person, simply go to the front of the room. We'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I believe we're ready to move on to agenda item 13, public comment on items not on the agenda. Please note the board may not discuss or take any action on any item raised during this public comment section, except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda for a future meeting. So will you please open the public, open for public comment, please?
Thank you, Madam President. The Q&A is open. If any member of the public would like to comment on items not on the agenda, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, or simply raise your hand. If you are in person, simply go to the front of the room. We will give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay.
We will move to agenda item 14, suggestions for future agenda items. The board, are there any suggestions for future agenda items?
I do have one, Madam Chair. I just wanted to let the board know that we will be hosting, well, virtually hosting for our May meeting. The National Council of State Boards of Nursing have asked to come do a presentation for our board, and should be a fairly significant conversation. They want to cover a whole lot of things, so I've offered them a good chunk of time. It'll be a really interesting conversation.
Will that be a two-day meeting, Ms. Yamaguchi?
At this point, we don't think so, and we also believe that we will conduct this via WebEx.
Okay.
Well, kudos to you for getting the NCSBN. I'm impressed.
They're excited to come or log on.
Log on.
And we have covered a number of items today, including potential ledge-reg areas of interest, and some really are at the periphery of nursing. Just a couple items. The reclassification or characterization from domestic violence, criminal convictions from misdemeanors to potential violent felonies that could impact the work we do, especially regards to discipline cases. And the other is the ongoing issue regarding student loan forgiveness. I have to imagine that there are any of a number of VNs and psych techs, especially in state service, but throughout the state, who will be impacted by that. And there are a number of bills still percolating through the process. The other is public service loan forgiveness for those already in state service. And so I think it's good for consumers, and I truly hope the legislature will pass, because there are two competing versions. Public service loan forgiveness was already approved by Congress, so that's virtually set in stone, but the executive action on the president's part, that's still being litigated. But I really hope and pray that goes through. It's going to give relief to, who knows how many Californians, and especially those who work in healthcare. The other thing I would say is anybody wanting to enter into the healing professions, the helping arts, vocational nursing, psych techs, truly are unsung heroes. I'll give you an example. I was walking through the neighborhood late January of this year, and I see a neighbor, and I usually don't see him as it comes to, because he works nights. Well, on the evening of January 21st, he was assigned at his hospital. He does wound care. Both he and his lovely missus are RNs. And so, of course, we started talking. He got out of the car. He was in his scrubs. Jeff and Christine, he works at a hospital in Alhambra, California, just directly adjacent to Monterey Park. And so he was there during the shooting. Terrible, horrific. This gun violence, it's got to end. And I hope and pray that this is not something that we become desensitized to, because it is truly and absolutely and unequivocally a public health crisis. And so really we have to change our hearts and minds and attitudes so we can really, support those who serve, especially our nurses. Totally, truly unsung heroes. So thank you.
No, thank you. Those were excellent comments, and I absolutely concur with everything you said.
Madam Chair, if there were no further suggestions for future agenda items, I'd recommend, with the unanimous consent of the board, that we not reconvene in open session after the closed session is completed. That way, since we're dealing with a hybrid format here, it will eliminate some potential technical problems.
Thank you so much. So, Mr. Swenson, do I then just say that we'll adjourn after closed session?
Yes.
All right.
So long as no board members object to that, it can be done by unanimous consent.
Is there any discussion around that or comment regarding adjourning after closed session?